Electricity Minister Dr Kgosientsho Ramokgopa has apologized for the increased load shedding levels during the cold snap last week. Ramokgopa says the move to stage 6 was a combination of increased demand and a loss of energy capacity. Ziyanda Ngcobo spoke to the minister earlier after his weekly briefing on the power grid.
Electricity Minister Dr Kgosientsho Ramokgopa has just concluded his briefing where he's basically given an outline on the security measures that have taken place insofar as the energy availability factor is concerned, reflecting on the fact that there have been some negatives regarding the energy grid and saying that we're not out of the woods yet, but also talking about how there have been some arrests and there are ongoing investigations that are continuing when it comes to the sabotage and the crime related to Eskom. Let's bring in then the Electricity Minister, Dr. Ramokgopa. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika. You've spoken about the fact that tomorrow there should be some reprieve going forward, but I guess the question is, after the last 3 days that South Africans have experienced, why couldn't you plan ahead? Because you have yourself said that the next 2 weeks will be the coldest days of winter.
Well, a number of things. So the first issue that we have been raising consistently is about the reliability of the units. Essentially, the units just failing on their own. And if you look at the period where we had lesser levels of load shedding, where we didn't have load shedding for 2/3 of the day and then upping it to stage 3 load shedding during the PM peak, what we had done very, very exceptionally well was to reduce the number of failures of units. So in megawatts terms, they came even as low as 3,700 megawatts. So what we experienced during the past week was that we lost an additional 5,000 megawatts. So that number just surged to 18,000 megawatts of units failing. And I did share with the public what are the issues that accounts largely for those failures. It has to do with something called boiler tube leaks. It accounted for over 70% of the failures of those units. And then having lost that about 5,000 megawatts on the generation side, so your generation capacity was lowered by that amount of megawatts. On the demand side, Tuesday and Wednesday, we saw the largest peak. So we added an additional 3,000 megawatts on top of what was a peak experience during this winter period. So on the net result, you've lost 5,000 and there's 3,000 more demand. So there's 8,000 megawatts that was out. And of course, as a result of that, we intensively engaged your peaking plants, your open cycle gas turbines, and also your pump storage. And unfortunately, we could not replenish those in time. We needed a period to replenish them. And then we took the evening of Friday. That's why we went to stage 6, and then also took the whole of Saturday, stage 6. We were able to replenish those resources, water and diesel, and then now we've been able to return about 2 units, 1,300 megawatts. That's why you are seeing us now at stage 2. We are expecting by the 18th to add another 5,000 megawatts of generating capacity, and that's the confidence to be able to bring it down. You are absolutely correct. So it's a planning issue on our part, and I did acknowledge that in ensuring that as we anticipate what peak demand is, I think we must streamline the replenishing of the resources. And for that, we want to profusely apologize to the South African public, because I think that dents the confidence in our ability to be able to resolve load shedding, because we have done relatively well and suddenly the stage 6. And that's why I was saying to the team, load shedding is unacceptable. But we are going to treat stage 6 as an extraordinary event. Extraordinary simply means that we don't expect to be going to those levels of intensity, especially given the kind of improvements that we are making, and we want to maintain that going into the future.
All right, so that's Electricity Minister Dr Kgosientsho Ramokgopa reflecting then on the forecasting actually what the next couple of days and weeks will be looking like in terms of our energy supply. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Ziyanda Ngcobo in Tshwane.